Hello, everyone. I'm Ying, Senior Programs Manager at the Art Fund, and it's such a pleasure to be hosting this panel discussion for friends and supporters of Art Fund and the British Council this evening. I work closely with our museum partners as they applied to Art Fund for our support, so this covers a wide range of activities, but a lot of my work is particularly on our acquisitions program, and so our support for UK collections. We are only able to help museums, galleries, and public art collections in this way with the backing of our members and supporters. Thank you for the part you play in making this possible. This evening, we are thrilled to get closer to the British Council to learn more about their remarkable art collection and how it is shared internationally. And as Scarlett mentioned previously, back in 2018, I was a curator in the visual arts department, so it's even more thrilling now in my role at the Art Fund to be welcoming past lovely colleagues. The British Council collection began in the 1930s and now comprises more than 8,500 works of art, craft, and design, developed with the aim of promoting the achievements of UK artists abroad. As the collection has no permanent gallery space, it is often referred to as a museum without walls. Much of it is on display across the world through special programs developed by or in collaboration with the British Council, or as loans to international museums. Beyond the collection, the British Council has overseen the British Pavilion at Venice Biennale, a celebration of contemporary British art for an international audience. The Art Fund has been working together with British Council in Venice since 2013, particularly by supporting opportunities to share artworks and installations with people in the UK. Some of you, and myself included, have been lucky enough to head to this year's Biennale and seen the British Council commission for the British Pavilion by artist Sonia Boyce. Sonia's installation entitled Feeling Her Way was awarded the coveted Golden Lion Award, and the Art Fund is absolutely delighted to be supporting the future presentation of this wonderful exhibition to Turner Contemporary in Margate. We'll speak more about Venice later and share some films of Sonia's work. But now I'm pleased to welcome our panel. I'm delighted to be joined by Moira Lindsay, Head of Collection, Visual Arts at the British Council, who will be sharing more about the collection and speaking with me about Venice, alongside Milan Lucic, British Council Arts Manager in the Western Balkans, and Jelena Ognjanović, a curator from the gallery in Novi Sad, Serbia, who will share with us a project that they worked on together in the Western Balkans using the Council's collection. It would be fantastic if you are all able to introduce yourselves and say a few words about your role and work, starting with Moira.
Thanks, Ying. So welcome everyone. My name is Moira Lindsay and I'm Head of Collection at British Council, and I've worked at British Council since 2017. So my role is to manage, develop, look after, care for the collection, make sure it's being used in our programs.
And Milan?
Hello from the Western Balkans. My name is Milan Lucic. As Ying said, I'm the arts manager in this region, and my role is to cover the arts program for the British Council in 6 countries, which are Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Macedonia, Northern Macedonia, excuse me, Montenegro, and Serbia.
Right. And Jelena?
Hello, good evening. My name is Jelena Ognjanović. I'm a curator and nowadays a program director at the Gallery of Matica Srpska. It's a kind of a national gallery situated in Novi Sad. It's the second biggest city in Serbia. And I had the pleasure of working with British Council on the project Collaborative Collections and the exhibition Perceptions.
Thank you all. And as you've heard, we have a fascinating panel that I'm excited to dive in and talk more about the collection and how they've all worked together. Moira, I thought we could come to you first to give us some context about the history of British Council collection, and what the aim is of the collection and how it is used today.
Thanks, Ying. So I'm going to try and not talk too much because I really do want the audience to hear from Milan and Jelena. So what I thought I would do is just a very quick introduction to our collection, why we have it and what we do with it. You might be familiar with some of the artworks that are in our collection, which are very well known, but you may not be so familiar with us as a collection or as an organization. And that's because a lot of our work is done internationally. So British Council, as an organisation, was founded in 1934, and our role is to share UK culture, values, English language internationally around the world. We've been doing this since 1934. We now have a network of arts colleagues in 110 countries around the world. So we are quite a large global organization, and we then within that we have our collections. So the collection was founded in 1938, and this is because we were already starting to create exhibitions of British art, which we wanted to tour around the world, and it became evident quite quickly that the best way to that was actually to have our own collection. So we were creating these exhibitions from the collection to share in exhibitions. We also would display works of art in our offices. Those offices, particularly in those early days, were cultural hubs. So they were where lots of important events were being held. They were not just offices as you might think of offices today. As Ying said, we are a traveling collection museum without walls. So we don't have a museum in the UK, and so that's why it's quite difficult perhaps to explain everything that we do, because you might visit a museum and actually see the art together. But we're formed for British Council's cultural purposes. So we are a traveling collection. It is not in any way encyclopedic. That's not our purpose. And that's, I think, what makes us really interesting in what we do. Sorry, slight technical glitch. There we go. So in terms of the collection, just to give you an idea of the collection scope, we have nearly 9,000 artworks, depending on how you count them, if you count a set of prints as one individual print or as a series. So it's quite a large collection of modern and contemporary British art. We have an operational hub in London, so that's where we do all of our collection care activities, where we have storage, where we might receive visitors, where we have curators come and research the collection. And in terms of what's in the collection and how we use it, we're trying to think about what's happening in the UK today at that particular moment in time. We are sharing what you might see in the UK if you go to an exhibition. Our artists, in terms of our definition of British and British Council, you do not have to have a British passport. You don't have to be British born or British educated. It's about showing the art scene of what anyone in the UK might see today, whether you're a visitor, whether you're living in the UK. So it's very much perhaps a snapshot sometimes, because artists move on and they move around the world, but it's very much around what you see here in the UK. It's very broad definition of British. And then finally, just to give you a slight flavour of what we do, and I think the next example that Milan and Jelena will explain will give you a much better feel for how we use the collection, because it is quite and you'll hear that shortly from the perceptions example in Novi Sad. We curate co-curated exhibitions around the world. We also curate digital exhibitions, usually inviting international curators to select from our collection and create an exhibition on the platform. We also have quite an active UK and international loans program, which might actually be the method that most of you might be familiar with some of our artworks. And we also work, this is really important, we work thematically. So in terms of what British Council does with its collection, it's very much around the narrative and the voice and the context that our partners want to use the work. So we work thematically around, for example, women's rights, or freedom of speech, democracy, the environment, climate change. And that is I think quite unique in the way that we use our collection. And the particular example that Milan and Jelena are going to talk about was actually in a very broad sense looking at gender equality in collections and with artists. And I think I'm having a very unstable connection. So I think I'm going to end my slides there and pass back on to Ying to introduce Milan and Jelena with a really, really amazing example, which I saw was the first program I saw start to finish using our collection. And it just is absolutely amazing. And it's quite complicated, but it's exactly what our collection should be doing. So I'm really pleased that they can be here to explain in a more local context how important that was for them and what it's done for their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. And we only lost you very briefly, and you're very much back now. So good news. And that was brilliant. And it's so interesting to hear how sharing the collection needs to be thought about in a different way, as you say. And as there's no permanent gallery space, how the works are sort of ambassadors in themselves. So now, Milan and Jelena, in 2018, you worked together on a collaborative project with curators from museums across the Western Balkans to develop an exhibition that included work from the British Council collection. It would be great if you could tell us more about your collaboration and the exhibition and your experience of working with the collection. So over to you.
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be able to talk about this project. And when we prepared this presentation, actually, we were talking about it as something which happened in the past. But I will demonstrate now and prove that actually this project is still somehow living. So basically, before I dive into the overall concept of it and the structure of it, so that you can understand better the way we use the collection, I would just like to say a few brief words about the Western Balkans, which is obviously a very turbulent area, especially it was in the 90s as well. All the countries has communist heritage, and as well there is this pressure of the ongoing economical transition from, we were all in communist societies and we are all transiting into free markets, and that's why culture at some point, and especially in the moment we were thinking about this project, was somehow left aside. And this resulted as well in a very poor condition of the infrastructure, and three, let's say, biggest museums in the region were literally closed. It was the National Museum in Sarajevo, the National Museum in Belgrade, and the Museum of Contemporary Arts in Belgrade as well. So once we started, I mean, we did several tours, exhibition tours in the region. We presented ready-made exhibitions such as Henry Moore prints or Grayson Perry exhibition. We started to discuss with our partners like Jelena, like other colleagues within the region, and we all wanted to change this reality of the perception that the museums are closed and that they're promoting something very old and dusty and irrelevant for contemporary audience. And that's why I truly believe that this is a unique example of trilateral conversations we had here with our partners in the region curators and artists on one side, our colleagues in London, which were very open and willing to hear the needs of our partners, and us here working at the British Council in the region. And to describe this collaboration, basically, we wanted to reinvent it, because working in cultural relations can be a slippery ground, and especially having somebody kind of promoting ready-made exhibitions somewhere else without any context and any reference to the reality of the museum, the art scene, and the wider society. So we all agreed that we want to work in more collaborative way, and we started to talk about that, how to do it. On the other hand, having in mind this situation with the audiences and the perception of museums, actually we to address some topics which are connecting the region itself, this turbulent region within itself, and the UK. And very quickly we came to a very interesting solution, and that was, let's say, very broadly, gender equality. And on the other hand, our colleagues in London decided to do a different move, to open the collection for the curators actually who are working here in their context, and allow them the freedom to, the liberty to develop their own narratives using the artworks in the artworks for developing their exhibitions. So I will just go very briefly through the practical format, so that you understand which is what way we chose to go and how to produce this project. I'm quite sure that Jelena will tell you much more about it. But basically, we launched open call. We invited curators and their museums to apply. We shared the artworks we had in our collection. It's available online, so people could get introduced to it. And we selected 5 museums and 5 curators actually to start the program with us. So we had 2 workshops. One happened here in Novi Sad in Serbia, and the other one happened in London. And after these 2 workshops, actually the curators were able to develop, to co-curate a core part of the exhibition, which was made of 20 artworks from our collection. But as well, we actually motivated them to develop their own narrative, so they would actually decide which they wanted to integrate their story in the narrative of the exhibition itself. And like in Jelena's case, she actually included some artworks from core collection, or with a very, very powerful statement, the curator in Montenegro actually chose the curators, female artists who were not within the collection of National Museum of Montenegro, and really made a subversion by including them in the exhibition space, pointing out that as well female artists should be treated in the same way that male artists are. I think that for us, and I will conclude my saying about this, I think for us the most important thing was to have a very clear process, and I'm particularly proud that my organization decided to take the role of somebody who was a feedback provider and not the leader in this process. And I believe Jelena explained how she felt about it. The outcome of this process, we had 5 exhibitions within the region. They attracted huge number of audiences. We delivered a great side programs, and it was very important for us to actually present what are the ongoing tendencies within the British museum scene and the technologies that they're using in order to attract audiences. So we worked with our colleagues on the presentations, but as well different ways to include the audience and talk about this important topic.
Okay, so once again, I will just present myself. Hi to everybody. My name is Jelena Ognjanović, and I had a chance to be one of the curators for the Perception exhibition in 2018. It was a great pleasure for the Gallery of Matica Srpska, which is a kind of a national gallery, to be able to work with the contemporary British art and to put in juxtaposition the art of past, which is in the collection of the Gallery of Matica Srpska, with this contemporary art world. As two collections are, in my case, as a curator in this exhibition, were totally different. So not just geographically, but also in the time. So totally different collections were put together to explain the timeless concept of women art and gender equality and the topic of feminism in a way. So it was a very kind of problematic, or it was very interesting how to put together these concepts and actually to present audience in Serbia to see multi-layered exhibition and also multi-layered concept of works of art that they usually see in the Gallery of Matica Srpska. So it was not just a new concept for the audience, it was also a new concept for the gallery itself, because in this way we actually made a conversation between contemporary art and past, and we connected collections in a very specific way. Through a few topics, we try to find not just the similarity in ideas, for example, in self-portraits, in Sara Luka's work with the self-portraits of Serbian female artists from the 19th and 20th century, as well as discussing the idea of representations of women in, for example, Claire Strand's work that is called Spice Girls, with the portraits of girls from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century, which actually shows the idea of the importance or the extravagation of girls as wanting to be more grown up and to present them to the society in a special way, which actually kind of stands also in the contemporary world as well. It was standing in 18th century, so around 300 years before. Also the concept of women's body and also women as allegories were part of the concept of the exhibition. And also what was interesting is to present a female gaze versus male gaze. So the exhibition explored not just the works of art by female artists from our collection, from the Gallery of Matica Srpska, but also some works by men artists. So to kind of contrast the two special views on art and on the world. The exhibition was a kind of a platform and the surroundings for the accompanying program. So there was more than 25 lectures, discussions and talks with the contemporary artists, with students. We also had inclusive workshops and workshop for children, and a lot of different programs that actually provided more talk and discussion in the society about the topic. And what was also important, that the exhibition was kind of reflected also in the open space with its marketing and let's say outdoor presentations, which were not just billboards with the commercials and ads about the exhibition, but also kind of notions and messages sent through this outdoor program. So all in all, the exhibition was very successful, more than 15,000 visitors, and also very great influence on the program of the Gallery of Matica Srpska in the next years, because thanks to this project, we started making more and more projects that include contemporary topics and issues of today's societies. For example, like this year's exhibition about migrations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's such a fascinating project, and I'm only sorry that we don't have much more time to speak about it in length. Although, Milan, when you were planning for this event, you spoke about the project and its revitalization it's had for museums and galleries in the Western Balkans. And I wonder if you could both share a little bit more about that impact.
Well, I mean, obviously, this was one of the factors that influenced this change. But I think Jelena would agree with me that actually museums today are in much better position than they were 5 or 6 years ago, and that this perception that they're closed and boring completely changed. I think that now there is a new opening or a new exhibition presented, so definitely think it was right moment for us to be there and support our partners in their aim to change the reality.
In the case of the Gallery of Matica Srpska, the changes really can be seen today. From the one side, the building audience and making new audience was something that this exhibition started in a way. And on the other hand, it tackled the curators to think differently about its collection, and to see that these kind of projects actually make and enrich not just the collection of the gallery, but also probably the collection of British Council in the ways of interpretations. And as I already said, this inspired us to think more about issues of the society today, as this was one of them, the idea of gender equality. So we had kind of similar exhibitions in the next years, like women identities, and as I already mentioned, the migration project and the migrations in art.
Great, thank you. I know that your collaborations in the Western Balkans have gone on to be involved with pavilions in Venice, and this seems like a great moment to speak about this year's Venice Biennale. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Venice Biennale, it is a celebration of art and architecture, exploring themes of politics and contemporary cultural and social issues through performance, sculpture, and installation. With the first event in 1895, it has become an important moment in the global art world calendar, and today attracts 500,000 visitors a year. I was lucky enough to be in Venice earlier this year, and the British Council has been the commissioner of the British Pavilion at Venice Biennale since 1937, presenting work by groundbreaking artists and pioneering architects. We're going to see a short film about this year's artist, Sonia Boyce, and her project in Venice shortly. But first, Moira, I wondered if you could share with us more about why Venice is so important for the British Council and what it means for British artists.
Thanks, Ying. And obviously I'm slightly biased because I've always got my head of collection hat on, so I have to take that off for a moment and talk about Venice. British Council has been commissioning the Venice, the exhibition of United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland's exhibition since 1937. And I think, you know, it was very early in our days as an organization, but our role now, as it was then, was very much to share amazing progression for British Council to actually then take on that role of running the pavilion and commission those exhibitions. So we've been commissioning the exhibitions alternately of art and architecture. And I think it's important because it's, I mean, if for those who haven't been to Venice, the Venice Biennale, it can be quite overwhelming, but it is it's one way, and it's, you know, very important, clear, it's one way, it's not the only way, it's one way to see a lot of art from different places, from different countries, different perspectives, all in one place. And that is quite a powerful moment to see such a variety of art. And obviously each, with the country pavilions, each country's a different way of commissioning and selecting their artists. Actually, over the years, we've not always done a solo show, so those more familiar with it recently will be aware it generally we commission one artist to represent the UK, but actually in the past we've also done group shows, and a lot of those artists, actually sometimes the particular artworks that have been exhibited in the Venice Biennale exhibition have actually entered our collection or other UK collections and international collections, and that's because of the exposure. So it's a very particular a method of exposure, but it's really, really important, and it's where one of the ways that the UK can show the amazing art that's happening in Britain today.
Great, thank you, Moira. And I definitely want to talk later on a bit more about the impact on UK collections. But first, I thought everyone might like to see a short film with Sonia Boyce speaking to Emma Ridgway, the Shane Ackroyd Associate Curator of the British Pavilion, about the making of the exhibition.
There's a part of me that enjoys making noise and wanting to other people to create noise. The exhibition comprises of a series of performances. I invited 4 singers and 1 composer, Jackie Dankworth, Poppy Ajuda, Tanita Tikaram, Sophia Jernberg, and Evelyn Wallen, to be involved in a kind of improvisation where they might sing together, where they might respond to each other through song. I just think there's something immediately connective about singing a song that may seem strange for a visual art exhibition, but I think that the combination of the visualness of this exhibition as well as the emotiveness of the singing, I'm wanting really the viewers to feel embraced by the show.
So imagine you're lions.
We are lions.
You are lions, I know. But so, a sound that is a sound you wouldn't normally make singing. That's a good growl.
Evelyn had been brought in to kind of guide and lead these 3 singers into an improvisation session. She's asking them to do certain things that kind of both get them warmed up, but also get them to kind of start to play with their voice.
Run.
This is kind of the iconic moment, you could say, for the whole project, of just actually trying something out and seeing how it goes and then playing with it, which is where the title of the whole exhibition comes from, Feeling Her Way. Literally, it's about exploration and just kind of sensing, all right, I'm going to go in this direction, and just seeing where it goes.
It's very intimate, actually, what we're seeing. And one of the things we talked about a lot as well was to kind of trust in the creative process and trust in the project, and that sense of trust was very strong on the day. People talked about that.
You know, much of what I do is about improvisation, about just bringing people into a space and say, okay, what are we going to do here, and just seeing what unfolds. So that's the very first room, and much of that took place at Abbey Road Studios, all in one morning actually. And then in the afternoon, I filmed each performer performing something that they wanted to do. Some of it was improvised, something that they had in mind that they wanted to bring to that day. So the following rooms are of the individual performers.
I hope everyone enjoyed that insight into Sonia's work. I was really lucky to make it to Venice earlier to see the exhibition, and it really is a very powerful, moving and emotive installation, and very much well deserved of the Golden Lion Award. This year, Art Fund has supported a future presentation of the exhibition at Turner Contemporary Margate. This includes supporting 2 Margate students to take part in the Venice Fellowships Program, a scheme which provides training, on-site experience at the British Pavilion in Venice, and independent research opportunities for students, graduates, and researchers. This follows a long line of brilliant Venice presentations we've helped bring to the UK, including the exhibition Jeremy Deller, English Magic, which toured 3 UK venues in 2014 to 15, and support for Sir John Soane's Museum to stage Sarah Lucas's Power in Woman exhibition, which brought 3 of her acclaimed sculptures from the Venice Biennale to the UK for the first time in 2016. In 2019, we hosted a talks program with the British Council about Venice for curators based in the UK also. Moira, thinking about Sonia's exhibition heading to Turner Contemporary and the other exhibitions and tours that have come out of Venice Biennale, it would be great if you could expand a little more on the impact of Venice has had on UK museums and galleries, and ultimately their collections.
Thanks, Ying. So I think, I mean, personally, I think Venice is absolutely amazing, but and with my British Council head on as well, you know, it's about UK international collaboration. So I think the showing of Venice that have been showing of artwork that have been commissioned for Venice back in the UK, I think is really important for audiences in the UK. Not everyone can travel to Venice or wishes to, and I think it's really important that the works that we are commissioning, others commissioning, can be shown more widely. So the tours that you mentioned before are really, really important, and I think, yeah, the Turner Contemporary showing is really exciting. I'm really looking forward to that, and it's about bringing it back. That sounds a bit cheesy, but it is about bringing it back to the UK, because it's about UK art and UK artists, and it's a great opportunity for the artists who do show in Venice. It's a big challenge, it's a very big commission, but it's really important for me as a collections person that there is legacy, and so entering collections, whether it's British Council collection or the other collections, is really, really important. And it's that the commissioning for the pavilion is such a specific thing that really amazing art comes out of that, and it's really important, I personally think, for UK culture that artwork has a legacy, particularly in the UK and in UK collections, for the future, because it's such an important moment in many of those artists' careers. So that, just with my collections, head on, and obviously lots of works have entered collections, including British Council collection, but also other collections around the UK. And I think that's really important, and it's important to continue. It is a challenge for all collections, for acquisitions. It always has been. I think it's more challenging than ever. But museums and collections are really important, because that's how we preserve those artworks, and it's collections' role to look after them, preserve them, and share them, around the world, and they will always have a meaning, in the way that the exhibition in Novi Sad was using historic artworks with contemporary artworks. They'll always have a meaning, always have a context. So for me, always having them being collected is kind of the ideal, because I think it's really important that such important commissions are there for the future, for legacy, and particularly for UK audiences. So that was a very waffly answer, Ying.
No, that's really fascinating to hear, and really important to hear about this impact of legacy, and to hear, you know, that it has, some works has gone, you know, to go back to British Council collection, and it means that this sort of way of sharing artworks in the UK, but also internationally, with other British Council art colleagues will continue. And Art Fund is really pleased to be able to support this work too. So back to the British Council collection, I know you have some plans for moving the collection. Are you able to share a little bit more about what's in store?
Yes, and I do have a slide, hopefully, that might come up in a moment, which will illustrate it a little bit better. Excellent. Okay, so we are moving the collection. So the collection, as I said earlier, is housed in a kind of collection facility in London. We don't have a museum, so our work is done through museum partners around the world and in the UK. But we've been looking for a new fit-for-purpose operational hub for quite a while, and an amazing partnership opportunity came up very recently in Coventry. So we are moving our entire collection and all its facilities and our team to Coventry in 2024. There is a very early architect's impression on the slide, and that is probably not what the building will look like. But for anyone that knows Coventry, this is actually a former IKEA building, which is actually slap bang in the city centre of Coventry. So it's in a really great location. It's a substantial building, so it meets all of our needs. But most importantly for us, we will be co-locating with two other collections. So we'll be co-locating with one of our sister collections, the Arts Council collection, which also has a lot of synergies with us, and also with some of the collections of culture, Coventry Trust. So having those three collections together, I think, will be really exciting for us, and also really important for our work, because we can draw on that wider pool of arts experts and colleagues. In terms of British Council collection, that will allow us to store our entire collection in one place. It will have fit for purpose conservation areas. We'll be able to receive visitors. Jelena and Milan will remember when we visited the collection for Perceptions, we had a lot of rejigging of things in our current facility just to make that happen. So our new facility will be much more efficient in terms of being able to receive curators and researchers when they want to come and see our artworks and research. And we will run sort of sessions with them in looking at those works, and we can actually display them properly and so on. So it's a really, really amazing project. It's a big undertaking for us to move the entire collection. So we will shortly be moving into a kind of blackout period, if you like, just while we undertake all of that prep before opening in 2024. But in terms of what Art Fund patrons might still see about the collection between now and then, I just had a very quick slide of what the collection is doing right now. We, as well as our own programs such as Perceptions in Novi Sad, we also do lend. So we lend to museums and galleries around the UK and around the world. And this is just a very short snapshot of what you can see. I'm going to say right now, I think one loan is opening in 3 days, so please do check the dates, or I can send them round through Scarlett and Nadia for Art Fund attendees. These are all exhibitions that are on now. I particularly just wanted to focus on the UK, there's also some in Europe, but I also just wanted to, just thinking about Venice again, everything comes back to Venice. I just wanted to highlight Barbara Hepworth. So this particular sculpture, Rhythmic Form, was made in 1949, and we collected it in 1950. And this was one of the works actually that Barbara Hepworth showed in Venice at the Venice Biennale in the British Pavilion. So that particular work has toured extensively since we acquired it just after its commissioning, and it's a very, very long-serving part of the collection, and it's always in demand. It's always being shown. So at the moment, it is on display in Edinburgh, in a very large Barbara Hepworth exhibition, which is just toured there from the Hepworth in Wakefield. And if anyone would like more information around those loans, I can definitely send more information through Scarlett and Nadia. So even if you're not familiar with British Council as an organisation or as a collection, you may well come across these artworks if you are visiting an exhibition. So hopefully this might prompt some of you to go and have a look at these shows, and maybe go to a museum you haven't been to before. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic space and will make a huge difference to the collection and how it's shared and visitors, etc. So now, before we head to the Q&A and take some questions from the audience, just a reminder to please do post your questions in the box at the bottom of the screen. So yeah, let me, I suppose, take a look. I'll be monitoring the Q&A box as well as my colleagues. And I see, yeah, there is a question from an attendee. Can you tell us a bit more about how the British Council identify artists they work with for Venice commissions?
So I think I better take that one then. In terms of Venice Biennale of Art, there is a commissioning panel, if you like, who are drawn from the sector in the UK, and they work with the visual arts team, with our commissioning group, to decide and propose the artist that's represented, and that is a really it's a really important role. I don't think I would want it, because you're making such an important proposal and decision, and there's a very, it's a very serious, very carefully thought out process. So it's not British Council deciding on its own which art or artists should be represented in the UK. It's very much drawing on a wide net of experts from our sector to really hear what they think we should be doing, and to make sure that what we are presenting does represent what's happening in the UK today.
Thank you. And then another question that I see here is for Milan and Jelena. Why do you think it's important for British Council's collection to be shared internationally? And what does it mean to be able to see works by leading British artists where you are?
Do we take over, Jelena? Please do.
Yes, so I have to say one of the most important thing is that to be aware of that audience in Serbia is not actually cannot actually travel a lot. So being able to see international exhibitions and exactly the British Council or British art is something very special. If you can see it in Serbia, because of course for our part it's kind of Britain is very unavailable for people from Serbia to go, so this is the way how we interact and how we combine collections, and we actually can present British art in Serbia. So for example, the works by Sarah Lucas, Tracy Amin, Claire Strand, and all other women artists from Britain were actually for the first time seen in Serbia.
Yeah, amazing. And then I have another question from Richard. With an exhibition like the one in the Western Balkans, does the initiative and drive come from local exhibitors, galleries, or does the British Council put an idea together and then take it to a local organization?
Moira, do you want to go ahead, or shall I just say? I mean, basically, we are trying to listen carefully to the ideas of our partners. I mean, on the other side, there is certain restrictions when it comes to mobility and feasibility of certain ideas to be produced. But however, we always tend to listen to the needs of our partners. We want to be a collaborator, not somebody who is just like playing their a different role. I particularly want to address that British Council has a different approach than large museums around the world, which are already using their collections on a commercial way. And that's why I'm particularly glad, connecting to what Jelena said earlier, that she exactly used the same formulation that I would use by describing why it is really important that the British Council has the possibility to share. Having in mind, as I'm the arts manager and covering various fields of various disciplines of the arts, I think having in mind that the films are traveling easily and they do not need British Council or music. I mean, the internet is there and our reality changed in past years. But the only genuine feel of Britain and what the contemporary British society is actually our collection. And we have it as an asset. And I definitely think it's one of the most valuable things we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there is another question from Penny, who says, very interested in the conversation about female artists. Is everyone aware of the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., which is the only museum in the world devoted to female artists? There are committees / activities in many of the US states, but all over Europe too, i.e. here in London, Paris, Milan, etc. So thank you very much, Penny. I did not know that. And then another question here, that is, what are the star, quote unquote, pieces in the collection? And is there anything that's particularly difficult to share or tour?
That's a question for me. Stars. I mean, I mean, they're all the really obvious stars that are very, you know, most of us we're very familiar with. So we've got we've got a very, very early Lucian Freud, for example. Barbara Hepworth, as I mentioned before, Henry Moore, Bridget Riley, Anish Kapoor, Chris Feely. I'm really interested in not looking at the stars because we've got a really, a big collection, and I think there are trends in collections. There are always artists everyone wants to think about, but there are other artworks that maybe went a little bit out of fashion and actually need to be looked at again. But I mean, what I've just listed are the kind of, I suppose, some of the main stars, and the most famous work and the most toured is probably the Lucian Freud Girl with Roses from 1947, because it's one of our earliest acquisitions, and Henry Moore. And we've done a lot of touring exhibitions with Henry Moore's works and with him, and he was very supportive of our support in his career. Obviously, I think Milan mentioned we've toured his works in the Western Balkans not that long ago actually as well. So he's a British Council star because we've worked with him for a very long time. Eduardo Palozzi as well, for anyone in Scotland, and we worked with Palozzi for a long time as well. But I think, yeah, for me there are other works I'm really interested in that I think we need to sort of go back over again, because the collection's a living collection, and the stars change, and I think curatorial interests change. To answer the more difficult part of the question, things that are more difficult. So in terms of our being a traveling collection, one of our criteria is that we should be able to get it in a truck or on a plane physically. Not every work, there's a few, small number that can't go on a plane, and that is more difficult for us because it does limit where we can show the works. But not every artwork is going to work in every context. So it's really important that we have you know, a range of works. We have a really great time-based media video art collection, and that in some ways can seem easier to show and easier to lend, but actually some artworks need a particular you know, installation method or equipment. So every work has its own unique set of challenges. It's just about making sure that when we work with partners that they can access the works that they would like to see and that they would like to show in their context. And I think sometimes there's compromises, sometimes there's not. So every work, yeah, is unique. Some are a little bit more difficult than others, either to do with, yeah, scalability, particular context, maybe where we're actually working, or actually what the curator would like to say or wants to do with their works. And sorry, I also forgot to say the Freud Go of Roses. If you do want to see our arguably most famous work, it is on show now in London at the Barbican in their post-war modern exhibition. We have about 10 works from our collection on loan there as well. So that is a really interesting exhibition if you haven't seen it and you do get a chance to go to London. Yeah, that's a really great show. So I've half answered it. I think
no, that was fantastic. No, and it's also really good to hear that it's such a collaborative process as well with British Council colleagues internationally. Yeah, and the sort of use and display of the collection is in itself sometimes a learning opportunity, if I remember myself. Okay, so I'm being asked to wrap up now. I want to thank you so much, Moira, Milan, and Jelena, for tonight's fascinating discussion. And thank you all who have joined us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed hearing more about the British Council's collection and work by British artists that is shared across the world. As many of you know, this event was part of our program for art partners, who are Art Fund's closest supporters and are at the very heart of the grants we give to museums and galleries. If you would like to know more about becoming an art partner and joining more of their brilliant events that will take you behind the scenes of the museums and galleries we support, then please do visit the Art Fund website or get in touch with Scarlett and the team. We'd love to hear from you. So I'll draw this conversation to a close, but thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening.